Rashid. How did you and Miriam meet?
Well, not to sound cheesy here, but I was in love the first time I saw her. Following my wife and son's death, I never thought I would recover from the sadness, but Miriam really turned my life around at the start.
Pardon? What was that?
Oh, nothing. It's just our relationship began to fall apart after a few years, but that's not unlike other marriages in our country.
I see. Now, how were you and Miriam introduced to each other? Was it just like a casual meeting, or had the marriage been arranged?
I actually knew her dad, and he told me about her, and we were arranged to be married.
Interesting.
How did you and Rashid meet?
After my mother died, I was taken in by my father and promptly forced me to marry Rashid. I never really saw him before our marriage date, and I really had no other option.
I'm getting the feeling that this is pretty common in your country. Is this true?
Unfortunately, yes. For most of our country's history, women have had very little rights, and most of my life living with Rashid, I haven't really had any say in our relationship. Additionally, he beat me relentlessly.
I'm getting the sense that your marriage was pretty similar to others in town. Could you, outline some similarities and maybe some differences between you and other people from Afghanistan?
Yeah, I think our relationship has a lot in common with most of our neighbors. I really love my wife. She used to make great food, and I continuously bring in money for the family. This is what a lot of marriages look like in our country, with the man and woman both pulling their own weight.
Mm-hmm. So, did you and Miriam talk about these roles, or was it like a natural thing, or is it just kind of like what you grew up with, or walk me through that?
Well, for me, my mom always made the food when I was young, and my dad always worked, and that's just what I expected of Miriam, and she went along with it, like making high quality food and always doing what I say.
Can you compare you and Rashid's relationship to other married couples in your town?
Well, under the Taliban's control, women have had very few rights, so I would say that my situation is very similar to other women in Kabul. We are forced to cook and clean. When I didn't make the food to Rashid's satisfaction, he aggressively beat me, even making me bite down on rocks.
So, tell us about your attempts with having children with Miriam.
Well, me and Miriam tried many times to have children. I supported her through the whole endeavor, and I really hoped we could have a small, happy family. Just me, Miriam, maybe a little boy, maybe two. There were many times when Miriam had gotten pregnant, but every time we unfortunately lost the baby. I just wish there was more I could have done to help Miriam during these difficult times.
It's very unfortunate. Was it by any chance disappointing when you finally when you realized that Miriam was infertile?
I love Miriam very much, and I always will love her. So I just accepted that we were not going to be able to have children, but for sure I was devastated. However, I always was positive. I'm just glad that I knew I could eventually have children, even if Miriam just didn't have the blessing.
Interesting.
Did you and Rashid ever have any children?
Well, we did try many times, but unfortunately, I ended up having 7 miscarriages. After that, he began to hate me, and our relationship was really never the same again.
So, tell me, Miriam, what was a common reaction from Rashid after you made his dinner?
Well, normally it isn't that bad, and he kind of just grunts. But after the miscarriages, he started to get very angry. I remember one night, he had knocked the rice onto the floor, and he stormed out of the house. I was very scared, and when he came back, he ended up shoving pebbles into my mouth and forcing me to chew. He told me it tasted like my rice. That ended up breaking 2 of my molars, and I had to spit, and when I spat out my molars, there was blood everywhere, and he really got mad at me for that.
So, with interviews, I've been doing interviews with other people in the area. Obviously, it's part of our documentary. And one thing that really stood out to me is you have been pointed out as a point of generosity around your community. Is there anything that you would like to, any context you would like to give to that, or did you do something, or?
Well, I always like to provide the best I can for my wife. My first gift to her was a beautiful burqa for her to wear.
Of course.
And the second was an even more stunning shawl. It was just beautiful.
Interesting.
I provide what I can and when I can for my wife.
And why do you give her these gifts? I mean, I know we talked about generosity earlier, but it's not really normal for this area, as what the impression that I've been getting. So is there like a reason for that?
I know that for some men in Kabul, it's unnecessary in our culture, but I enjoy seeing my wife happy. It makes me happy in return. I believe that if a man has a happy wife, then she will bear beautiful children. Although Miriam has not been able to bring me these children, there's always miracles that one can hope for.
Indeed.
Did you ever get any gifts or symbols of love from Rashid?
Well, at first he got me a shawl, which I loved, admittedly. But then, after I had my miscarriages and I could never give him a son, he kind of ended our love there and he beat me.
Did this ever happen with any other couples you know in Kabul?
I'm not really sure. I was never allowed outside. I would assume so, because that's how it is here. But I have always been treated a similar way my whole life, so that's all I know.
Did you ever have any other wives?
Yes, my most recent and only other wife would be a beautiful, wonderful woman named Layla.
Interesting. So how did that affect your relationship with Miriam, or was it just kind of 50-50?
At first, they were like mad at each other. They didn't really gel nicely. But as of late, they've been growing a close bond.
Interesting. Do you know any reason for that, or is it just them getting closer?
I think they've just adjusted to each other. Being the wives of such a great man like myself, it's only to be expected.
Obviously, yeah.
So, how did the introduction of your husband's second wife,
Layla?
Layla, how did her introduction affect your household's dynamic?
Well, at first Rashid loved and adored her just like me, treating her very properly.
You say at first. What changed after that?
Well, almost like me, Layla had a girl rather than a boy that Rashid had prayed for, and he blamed her from that. But our shared experiences of being beat only really brought us closer together.
I see.
So, continuing on with some points we made earlier, what was life like in your household?
Well, like other men in Kabul, I have total and utter control over my wives,
Of
who
course.
love and respect me.
Yeah.
And very much that respect turns into obedience, which is just natural in our society that we live in.
Interesting. Has there ever been any problems with them, or have they ever tried to run away, or anything like that?
There was one time that they tried to run away. I got them back though. They never tried again. I quickly reminded them who was in charge, and they've yet to question me again.
If you don't really mind me asking, this has been a common theme around the village. How do you remind them?
Well, I punished them. I did what I thought was a normal use of force that a man as great as myself would use to punish us.
Of course.
If you want more detail of what I did, you're not going to get it.
Okay. It seems that's all the time we have for you today. Thank you for cooperating and for talking with us. It has been a very good interview.
Yes.
Who was in charge of your household?
Well, at first, and usually it would be Rashid, which in our society would be pretty normal, but that was before he died.
Wait, what? He died?
Yes, I killed him.